And welcome in, everybody. I'm Bianca Della Garza. Thank you for joining us every day. So let's get into this. We begin with President Trump's executive order that cuts federal funding for PBS and NPR, citing bias in their reporting. Now, both receive partial funding through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or CBP. This executive order instructs CBP to stop the indirect funding via grants to local public radio and television stations. And the order reading in part, NPR and PBS have fueled partisanship and left-wing propaganda, which taxpayer dollars, and is highly inappropriate and an improper use of taxpayer money. It says President Trump working to ensure taxpayer dollars are no longer wasted on progressive pet projects, but rather used to benefit hardworking Americans. The president also set a June 30th deadline for all this money to cease. And just a short time ago, we heard, not too surprisingly, from the CEO of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. In a statement, they alleged this executive order is unlawful. The CEO, in a statement, saying CBP is not a federal executive agency subject to the president's authority, saying that Congress directly authorized and funded CBP to be a private nonprofit corporation wholly independent of the federal government. So pushback on this. Probably going to get to the Supreme Court, right? We are not surprised, but let's bring in our panel to talk about this and more. Pleased to have Editor-in-Chief for the National Review, Rich Lowry, with us today, and senior contributor over at The Federalist, Benjamin Weingarten. Guys, happy Friday. So President Trump, pretty clear in his order. Government funding, quote, he says, of news media in this environment is not only outdated and unnecessary, but corrosive to the appearance of journalistic independence. Rich, I'll kick it over to you first. So you just heard the CEO responding, saying he has no power to do this. So where does it go now, you think? All the way to the Supreme Court?
Yeah, so on the substantive question, there's no doubt President Trump is absolutely correct. It's preposterous in this day and age that we're still funding these left-wing media outlets. There are all sorts of other left-wing media outlets, right? And even if NPR and PBS are defunded, they can raise money. They've shown over the years, they'll give you a tote bag and give them a contribution. That's a perfectly fine business model. But I do think legally this is something that Congress has to do. I would hope it would be in the reconciliation bill that they're trying to pass, and Congress would just zero out this funding. That would end any legal dispute over the matter.
All right, so we will see where it goes. But, Ben, this is part of sort of how President Trump is, looking at, saving taxpayers' money. There's the NPR CEO in the famous TED Talk saying that truth gets in the way of getting things done. I also want to call into attention that the CBS interview with Kamala Harris, which is at the center of all that litigation, can you believe it? It's now been nominated for an Emmy in what category? Outstanding editing. Can't make it up, Ben.
Well, and let's not forget, of course, the Russiagate, the leading quote-unquote journalists in Russiagate all won their Pulitzers, never returned them.
That's right.
They don't think they did anything wrong. And of course, NPR, for example, it said, we're really not going to cover issues of Biden family corruption and international influence peddling. So it's disgraceful where corporate media is. It's disgraceful where essentially government media that's masquerading as private nonprofit media has been. No taxpayer dollars should be used to censor ourselves on the one hand, and the Trump administration is taking a big swing at that and trying to dismantle the censorship industrial complex. But the other part is the government then shouldn't also be underwriting the narrative that the state wants with our tax dollars and masquerading as objective and neutral journalistic entities. So obviously we shouldn't be funding NPR, PBS, et cetera. And at the end of the day, what this comes down to is we shouldn't have regime media in this country, certainly not taxpayer funded. Already corporate media operates as regime media. We shouldn't be underwriting and subsidizing any other media entities also that obviously have a partisan slant and also, frankly, that represent, you could argue, domestic interference in our political system.